The DataFrog SF2000 is the best retro handheld for only $20. Let's get into it. First things first, if you want to support the channel, you know what to do. Let's get to the review. Alright, so today I'm here with the DataFrog SF2000 after a few requests. Aside from the Powkiddy V90, this seems to be the most popular budget system currently. So the DataFrog SF2000 is in the hyper budget area of gaming handheld. So this is only $20. And for that price point, you're supposedly going to be able to play anything from NES, MAME, MegaDrive, all the way up to all the Game Boys, such as Game Boy Advance. Now, I do know that there's custom firmware for these, but I'm just going to be rocking the stock firmware today. And there is a new update for this system from DataFrog themselves, and this is the newer model that comes with that update. New update includes being able to favorite games and remapping the controls for different emulators and stuff like that. So this one includes new update right off the bat. Some of the older models didn't, and you can kind of tell by the box design. So we have a 3-inch IPS screen, 7 different emulators, and support for updates, which this one should already have the new update, so let's tear into it. So in the box here we have the actual DataFrog SF2000, but we also have some goodies. It looks like we have an AV cable to connect this to a TV, and then we also have a USB-C cable, which I didn't expect. That's super nice on a handheld at this price point. I was shocked with the Powkiddy V90 having Type-C, but this one has Type-C and it's even cheaper. So that's a good impression right off the bat. And look at that, it even comes with a micro SD card adapter if you want to add games to it, or if you just want to copy the games off of this card for your other systems. So that's super cool to see. And then the SF2000 itself comes in this little plastic baggie, which once again is slightly different from the older model. In the older box, the plastic baggie on that one was sort of clear. This bag is like opaque. There's subtle differences between the slightly updated model and the older model. So here's the DataFrog SF2000. We have this little screen protector on it, a little stubborn to take off, the little tab ripped off. But yeah, so here's the system itself. So it looks super similar to a Super Nintendo controller. All the buttons feel pretty similar to a Super Nintendo controller, but they all feel just a little more squishy and a little less responsive. But the shoulder buttons, on the other hand, have micro switches and are extremely clicky compared to a Super Nintendo controller, which has rubber dome switches. So it definitely looks like a Super Nintendo controller, but the actual feel isn't quite there. Now, ergonomically, you have this nice little hump in the back for the rechargeable battery, which is actually replaceable. I believe that you can get a new rechargeable battery for this thing for around $5, which is very nice. But the ergonomics are actually pretty okay, and the plastic does actually feel pretty good. It feels pretty similar to a Super Nintendo controller. And this unit is much heavier than other units I've taken a look at, such as the X350 Fake Switch Lite. This one feels a lot more dense, even though it's literally half the price. Maybe that's down to the battery, I don't know. And then obviously, this Nintendo Switch analog stick. This is basically a Nintendo Switch stick. I'm not too sure if it's the exact same part. It looks almost identical to a Nintendo Switch analog stick, except for the one fact that the analog stick doesn't click in. Now, one issue that I can tell with this system right off the bat, might have some more issues with it later on, obviously. But one thing that I could tell without even powering it on is that this D-pad is not great at all. No pivot to it whatsoever. If you push in the middle of the D-pad, the whole middle goes down. It doesn't pivot well at all. Now, granted, the real Super Nintendo controllers like this, but there are a lot of people who don't like D-pads that can't pivot that well, since it really hinders you in fighting games. So that's a little bit upsetting to see. So along the bottom of the unit, we have a power switch, as well as our USB-C port for charging, our micro SD card slot, which houses a 16GB no-name brand micro SD card that is filled with games, a headphone jack, which is super dope, and then a volume wheel. The speakers on this unit are on the back. There's 2 speaker grills, but one of them is fake. You really, in reality, only have 1 speaker that you're working with. So like I said, right off the bat, I was pretty impressed with the quality and the overall feel of the system, but I do have another quality control issue right off the bat. So this may not be an issue that everyone has, but my particular unit has a white spot on the display that is almost always visible. It's kind of hard to pick it up on camera, but it does not go away in person. This white spot stays on the screen at all times. Now, I'm not too sure if I can get a replacement for my unit or not. Might just not worried about it. Who knows? But this is really irritating. I know it's a cheap unit, but this is a pretty noticeable quality control issue. But getting over that, we have this pretty nice built-in operating system. It categorizes all of your games into their different lists, and it has a few almost like top pick games that you can click on right off the bat, or you can open the list of ROMs and go through them individually. So there's an absolute ton of ROMs on here for each system. I believe that's because it includes international games that weren't just in the USA or whatever. So pretty much almost any game that was on these systems is on this handheld. So you have a few thousand games to work with. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the newer revision of the handheld that comes preloaded with the new update. that has the search and favorite functions as well as the key mapping function. So that means if you want to play Super Mario but you don't want to scroll through the entire list of NES games to find it, you can favorite it, go to your favorites menu, and just click on it right there. I've heard some people say that they had issues updating this thing, so it's kind of relieving to see that it came with the new update right out of the box. And as far as performance goes, this thing is basically flawless. Now, it does have the occasional screen tearing, which is to be expected on these cheap handhelds because of the refresh rate of the displays, but with pretty much any game, this thing runs it just fine. There's a few select Game Boy Advance and Super Nintendo games that don't run that well because of the 3D assets, but with majority of the games that are on this system, it'll run them just fine. Alright, so to be completely honest, I was really impressed with the DataFrog SF2000 for the price. A lot of people recommended that I take a look at this, and I was really wondering why. It seems to be the retro console that a lot of people are talking about. The build quality on this one is better than the build quality of systems that are double the price point that I've owned. And it comes with a massive library of games, and there's even support for homebrew operating systems that you can change the operating system on this, and I've even seen people have RetroArch running on this, which unlocks a ton of new features. So I would definitely say that the SF2000 is worth the $20 price point. Granted, you have to wait for it to come from China if you want that kind of price. You can order it off of places like eBay for $30 and get it a little quicker, but that's up to you. I'd say it's worth the price point, but buyer beware with the quality control issues. The only main one that I ran into was the speck on the screen that wouldn't go away. Didn't really have any major issues aside from that. But with how a lot of people complimented the colors of the display and how it looked better than a Powkiddy V90 display, I was super excited to check it out, but mine honestly was a little underwhelming because of that little defect. So that's my thoughts on the display. So if you're willing to gamble with the factory defects of a $20 handheld, I'd say that this is a pretty good unit. I haven't seen anyone else have the particular issue that I've had, so I think that you'll probably be safe. But this is now probably my favorite handheld unit because it's honestly pretty ergonomic, and then the thumbstick isn't complete garbage like the fake Switch Lite that I looked at. It's a Switch thumbstick, so it's perfectly usable. And just the overall aesthetics of the unit are pretty fire. But thank you for stopping by. If you want to support the channel, you know what to do. That's all from me. I'm out. Peace.